Welcome back to another episode of Relatively Damaged Live. My name is Angela, and this is
Kat.
The live shows are currently streamed Mondays to YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Twitter. I don't think I forgot any of them. Please remember to follow and or subscribe and share with your friends if you like the show. On the Monday segment of the show, Kat and I talk for about 30 minutes on topics we find interesting. So pretty much anything. Our topic today is, what do I need to know about persuasion? And Kat, as always, well, we have a quote. So here we go. Go ahead, Kat.
All right. By one of our favorite people we quote, Adam Grant. The most underrated tool of persuasion is curiosity. A natural response to disagreement is to attack what people think. A more inviting alternative is to be genuinely fascinated by how they think. Curiosity is contagious. When advocacy closes minds, inquiry can open them.
But it's so much easier. By the way, hi, Trevor. It's so much easier to come up with these ideas in my head about why people do things.
Well, and to just dismiss them out of hand if they agree or disagree with you.
Yeah. There have been plenty of times in my life where I thought somebody said something and I'm like, well, that's crap, to only a few months or so later being the one to do things. Oh, okay. I have to say something really quick because Trevor said hi, Kat and cousin. So we have this ongoing joke that my sister is not his cousin, because I always introduced him as my cousin. So this last weekend, though, I think she got to be his cousin at church. Anyway, we've got some comedy there. So yeah, I'll be the cousin today. But when it's always a lot harder when people do things that maybe that aren't in line with or are totally different than what we think needs to happen or should happen, or how, I don't know, like even in science, where there's supposed to be a tremendous amount of curiosity, sometimes getting stuck in, but this is the way it's supposed to be. This is the way it's supposed to work. And yeah.
Well, I mean, I have this thing. So when I think of people and opinions, and I'm like, how could you get there? But I'm coming from my way of thinking. And that applies to science too. How did you get there? So all the preconceived biases, experience, everything that person brings is what they're bringing to inform their opinion. And if I'm thinking, well, that's crap, that's because I'm coming from a different bias, opinion, experience. So rather than just dismiss them out of hand, because if I want to persuade them to think differently or at least open their mind, or I want to do it to myself too, I could say, let me be curious about this. And the curiosity in and of itself, will asking those questions and opening the inquiry, it will either lead me to change my opinion or to confirm my opinion. And hopefully with the person that I'm conversing with or disagreeing with, it will do the same for them.
Well, but I think like we would all need to stay somewhat curious then, especially during like disagreements or wherever, each person sees things differently, right? So, because a lot of times, and I think it's really easy, to, like, maybe I solve a problem or someone else in my life solves a problem in their mind, and they think this is how I need to solve this problem. And and then not going into the place of then just doing it, solving in the way that they think they need to solve it, or I think I need to solve it, right? Because I know I do it too. But then forgetting that there's all these other options, when we get into talking about curiosity and even persuasion, like when people are under high amounts of stress and in panic and things like that, curiosity actually, I think, goes out the window. There's less of a chance to be curious because now choices are made from a desperate perspective. So I would think, like, especially in those situations, how does one remain curious, and how does one manage maybe that conflict or that injury, so that because if there's panic and anxiety happening, so that they can stay curious about the possibilities, right?
Okay. Well, I think that's like self-persuasion. So in a time of crisis, since persuasion is a topic, I'm going to keep it to that word.
Yeah,
But
please.
not to dismiss anything you said. So it's self-persuasion. I'm in a crisis. I must solve this now.
Right.
And the question is because we like status quo. Change is hard.
Mm-hmm.
So we're in this status quo and everything's going fine until it's not. And then it's like, what? I got to do something.
Yeah.
I've got to fix this. I've got to get back to that equilibrium.
Right.
So the first question is it really, how urgent is the crisis? Is it something I need to decide today?
Right. So I guess I'm trying to figure out how to put persuasion and curiosity together, because when we get in, at least for me, if I'm in panic and anxiety mode, then the last thing I think I might want would be to be persuaded.
Well, see, that's what I'm saying is the curiosity would be like, am I really in this panic mode? Is it really a crisis? Because the truth is that how many crises are of our own making?
Right.
And so that's kind of the first question, is just to take a step back. Is this really a crisis? I look at it, I think, we talked about this, about my hot water heater breaking. Is it a crisis? Well, yes, I need hot water. Is it a urgent crisis? No. I was able to say, okay, let me step back and say, what do I need to do? And so I had to look at my options, what were the most cost effective, and how soon I could get somebody in there. So I knew it was something I needed to take care of, but I didn't have to call the first person who could come immediately to do it.
Right.
I had to weigh my options. If worse came to worse, I could, go to my mom's or my sister's to take a shower, or to the gym, whatever. So I'm like, okay, there are options that I have. And so, and that's a relatively low stakes kind of crisis. So being able to take that step back and be able to say, what are my options? And then look through those options and make a decision. It's not something that needs to be done like that. It's just, okay.
Right. But if someone's already they already live in that high anxiety state, or they've got panic already as a response, right? And I think that because it takes time, at least in my mind, to kind of train that panic and anxiety out of oneself, to start recognizing, like, even in those little moments, that I don't have to panic. Oh, I can step back, I can take a pause, and I can think, and then I can make a decision. But if someone's in panic mode, then, like, all of those choices go out the window. So how does one in panic mode work on persuading themselves that they can stay curious? There we go.
Well,
I'm really working hard on staying on topic today.
yeah, yeah. I think in reality, I think those are kind of two separate issues. If somebody is in crisis mode and panic mode, it's hard to get out of that.
Right.
I think it's you need to I think you need to get out of that mindset first. I know I do. I know I don't make my best decisions when I'm in panic mode. So that's why I go to, is this really a crisis?
Okay, so one of the tools you use is saying, is this really a crisis?
Mm-hmm.
To help you step out of panic or anxiety into peace, I guess, or back into where you can be curious.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure if I really made this point very clear, but I know because usually in panic and anxiety, people are struggling to, like, there is that sense of, I've got to make a choice, I've got to make it quickly, and if I don't make it quickly, then I'm in trouble, right? It's almost like making a decision from fight or flight. And what happens when we're doing that? So they did an experiment where there were some people playing basketball and a bear went across the court, right? And because of all this excitement and working hard to count how many times they passed the ball, most people missed that a bear went through the court. Like, they didn't even see the bear. So, it's kind of like speeding too, when you think you're in a hurry, not speeding, but when you think you are late for work and it feels like everyone's getting in your way, and maybe it shaves 30 seconds off of your time to get to work, but in your mind, that's a lot of time. In reality, it's not a lot of time, right?
Mm-hmm.
But so when you're speeding down the street, from that perspective, you can't even see the openings sometimes. And in fact, everybody's probably getting in our way if we're running late, and coming from the perspective and the belief that, oh my gosh, we're never going to get there in time. Like, all we're going to see is the negative parts about the drive, and not, oh my gosh, that was so cool, so that person let us in, oh, that was nice, and keep going down the road.
Excuse me. Yeah, I get that. And see, I think when somebody is in that mode, it's hard to persuade them. Just like if somebody is entrenched in their ideas and I am right and you are wrong, there's nothing that you can do to persuade me, and rather than open themselves up to their curiosity to be persuaded, all they're doing is the same talking points over and over and over again. They're not engaging with you. And so when we're in that fight or flight mode, in that panic mode, it's a lack of engagement in those bigger thoughts. And I think we're talking of people on two different levels here. So when they're in panic mode, I think people tend to be closed. So what I do, if I notice that I'm in panic mode, I try to open myself up.
Right. Yeah. Jan's got a long one here. Do you want me to post it and let's read it?
Yeah.
Let's see what Jan has to say. Let's see if I can read the whole thing. My thought, totally on the topic. When it comes to persuasion skills, especially in business and in life as well, it's important to realize that you must have good intentions. When you have good intentions, your credibility goes up, and the positive... Hold on. How do I get back to it? Just a second.
I can see it on the side.
Yeah, let's see. When you have good intention, your credibility goes up, and the positive results or outcomes of your persuasive efforts are increased. Each person has their own set of values, or at least they should have them, and they should be good values when it comes to dealing in any manner with others as well as yourself. Well, yeah. I mean, and I think that those intentions are really great. And if you're in a situation where maybe someone hasn't lived by the values or done things from the perspective that you think they should be done, then how do you stay in curiosity or even persuasion mode, like to be able to persuade yourself out of fight or flight, right?
Mm-hmm.
um, or stay curious enough. I think for me, it's wondering and kind of going to awe, like awe and wonder,
Mm-hmm.
maybe. Like, what was the
Well,
purpose?
I'm going back to some of the conversations that we had about COVID and vaccinations.
Mm-hmm.
And if you feel to have one opinion that's very strong, and you have somebody who has the opposite opinion, and we've talked about that, is how do you come to understand their opinion, and
Mm.
and what are they coming from? So I'm thinking like that. So if people are coming from good intentions, I think not getting vaccinated is important, is important for me for these reasons. And I'm saying, well, I disagree with you. I think it's important to get vaccinated, and these are the reasons why. Um, but Jan points out something very good about the good intentions. Like those two positions, a lot of it were based in whether or not you think the people promoting the vaccines had good intentions or not. And
Right.
what
Yeah.
was
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
so it's very interesting. There's that perception. So not only was it about getting the vaccine or not getting the vaccine, it was about the intentions of the people supporting or whatever position you have, and where they're coming from,
Yeah.
and
So it
what you
goes
believe
way
in.
deeper.
Right. I am also thinking like salespeople.
Mm-hmm.
Salespeople can be very persuasive. Oh, this car, and they'll notice your body language and your little cues. And it was kind of funny when we were talking before the show. You said, "I saw you raise your eyebrows," something totally unrelated, but they look for those kinds of clues like that, those nonverbal cues, to be like, "Oh, okay, that person likes this feature," and then they push that. Whereas it might not be the best thing for them. I remember being young and uh, buying one of the first cars that I bought on my own, and got totally ripped off, partially because of my ignorance.
Yeah.
Because I was persuaded because it was a fun car.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Like,
You know,
that, and I think that's why there's like that word, you're going to persuade me, really, and then I'm thinking of the book, like I think it's by, yeah, Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference. He's an FBI negotiator, and how do you not split the difference, and how do you get there? Like, I think it's important, and I think Jan says, always be. He says exactly, Kat. I'm not going to deny that part. Always be ecological with others is the golden rule. So I think
mhm.
that's important. But like, and that's where I'm thinking, maybe not. I think. Wow, I'm having a hard time completing this sentence here. But I completed that one, so that's a good sign. Um, a lot of people, once they feel they've been persuaded or sold or this or that, then there's this bad taste, and I think it does come down to really good and healthy communication. In high stakes business, there's or large high money, right? Like a lot of money, and changing hands for services or what have you. One of the things that I know is really important that I've read about is they check in on the emotions, like it's really important for everybody to really try to be on the same page, and to check it, and also allowing room for no, that's not going to work for me. And how do I allow room for no when, if I'm feeling desperate, right? And sometimes that's the most important place we can put it, is in that spot.
Yeah, you just got into something different, something interesting, and that goes back to somebody's desperate.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I think it's that important for yourself. So if you're going into a negotiation or a kind of thing to be persuaded, you have to be certain of your opinion. If I would have been more educated about the cars, if I wouldn't have been, young and foolish and gotten oh yeah, this is a fun sports car, and instead said, you know what, I need a car that's reliable, you know, things that I check off now when I'm looking for a car, especially if I'm buying a used car, reliable, good maintenance record, no accidents, does it do what I need it to do?
Right.
And if it's fun and looks, fun to drive, that's a bonus. But it's going in there. So if you have no opinion on something, somebody with good intentions, my next car adventure, I went to an older gentleman who was the salesperson. He looked at me like his daughter. So he got for me something he would have given for his daughter. He took care
Mm.
of me because that man had good intentions. Whereas the first salesman, he was looking to make the quick sale and unload this lemon of a car.
Right.
And so he saw me and it was said, sucker. Uh,
I've been a sucker before. It's okay.
yeah,
That's why I
and
laugh.
we
Because
all
that's what
have
it
been.
feels like.
And that's why, so if you're going into a high stakes negotiation, like, you were saying business, okay, a lot of money. To me, buying a house is a lot of money. Buying a car is a lot of money.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So what am I going to negotiate out of that? What am
Right.
I
And I think,
willing to what am I willing to invest in that so that I think I'm getting a fair deal? And
that,
I'm
and I,
being with integrity, not ripping off the other person, but
right.
saying, how can we both win? You may not get
Right.
as much as you want. I may not get as much as I want, but we can both walk away from this and say, you know what? I got a fair deal.
Right. And I think also that part of that is talking about the things that we might be afraid to talk about because we're afraid, oh my gosh, if I let this person know this, then this is going to happen. Again, coming from that um, maybe victim mentality can happen of I don't want to be persuaded and what I want is what I want. And, because I think there gets to be that mindset too
Mm-hmm,
of
mm-hmm.
persuasion is bad. Like you could have decided, well, about the car. After that, all salesmen are bad, and
Right.
and and then never looked for the gentleman, the nice person that you wanted to do business with, right? And then you probably felt free to talk about some of your more concerns about the car or the downsides and the upsides, just to have like a really honest conversation about what you want or what you need or even maybe the fears about moving forward a little bit.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And,
Yeah.
and I think if someone's going to take advantage of that, then that just tells you a little bit about that person. That tells you more about that person than it does about you. And then maybe like I wouldn't need to do business with that type of person if it,
Mm-hmm,
and I would hope I would see that along the way if I were paying attention, but that's also not a guarantee.
mm-hmm. And that's so to go back to persuasion and curiosity, opening that.
Mm-hmm.
So, in that case, if I'm going to buy a car, I have a curiosity about the different cars and why that would be good for me. But I have to go in there knowing what it is that I want. Now, to take
Right.
that to a conversation, we won't get into political points. But let's say I have somebody who has a different political view than me, and I think they're nuts, and they think I'm nuts. But I want to understand why they think the way they do.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's somebody who is willing to engage and have that conversation, My brother-in-law and I have these wonderful political conversations, even though we come from two very different viewpoints. But what we have is that respect and that curiosity as to why the other thinks the way they do. And it's the really interesting thing about that, it made us realize that we are a lot closer in viewpoint than further apart because we've had those conversations. And it's been a starter. I mean, we've had conversations about very divisive topics, immigration, abortion, the economy. But because we come from that respect and that true curiosity, it's not necessarily that we're trying to persuade each other to change our opinion, but to persuade each other that we have valid opinions.
Right.
And the validity of those opinions have a basis, but it shows the viewpoint and the experience that we each bring to the table.
So sometimes, remaining curious inside of oneself would help to find common ground.
That's the start. If you're not curious within yourself, you're in a bubble. And
right, because if I shut myself down, I put that wall, like no one's going to negotiate with me, or this is my value, and therefore, then I don't even get a chance to connect with other people either. If we're, and in that connection, we can persuade each other, and by talking about things, and maybe we're closer on things on different points than we realize.
And the thing I think that's really good is it challenges your point of view and makes you really think, am I just going along to get along? Am I only interacting with people who have the same viewpoint as I do, i.e. confirmation bias? Or are we interacting with other people of different viewpoints and really trying to come to an understanding? I mean, I think here's my opinion, and you can disagree with me if you want, but one of the biggest problems in our country today is that people don't talk to try to find common ground. It's, if you don't believe this way, you are against me.
And that's the thing. I mean, they did a study, years ago, politicians would cross party lines, and nowadays they don't. And I think part of that comes with, I've made a decision, I've said this in front of everyone, and now I'm locked into confirmation bias, right? I have to only look for things that confirm this. And, they lose voters, or they lose this, or they lose that because of that unwillingness. But I think it's really interesting that it happens in government, because it is, I think, something intrinsic in today's society, is that we don't take that time to see to clearly understand. And sometimes I think it's because we don't want to,
Well, where is it? Change is hard. So if we're comfortable where we're at and thinking where we're at and believing where we're at, it's great. But the fact of the matter is, change always occurs. And so we need to stay curious to understand the change and go understand how to flow with it.
And this might be great right now, and what happens next might be fantastic.
I try to stay in that place. That's kind of been where I'm at, and staying in place. And I'm thinking life is much more fantastic when you stay curious and open to persuasion of people from other points of view, even though it's hard.
And it is hard. We won't deny that, everybody. Thank you for watching today's show. I'm Angela.
I am Kat.
If you feel like you want to hear more of my lovely voice, you can listen to me interview people who talk about their struggles and how they found hope and healing on the podcast you can find on Spotify, Apple, or pretty much everywhere you can listen to an audio podcast. You can find replays of this show on YouTube, Facebook. I don't know about Twitch. I'm still learning all these things. I don't know about Twitter. Maybe Twitter. I don't know. So I'm going to stay curious about that, and maybe somebody will let me know someday. Until then, I'm going to keep plugging. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.